everyone, and welcome to the Aplastic Anemia and MDS International Foundation podcast series. We're coming you today thanks to generous support from individuals, donors, and our corporate partners, including Celgene. My name is Tricia, and I'd like to introduce Robert Burleson, our communications manager.
Hello, everyone, and I'd like to introduce Sarah Nesheim, who hails from the Minneapolis area. Sarah is an aplastic anemia and PNH patient and survivor. We're excited to have her on the line to speak with us about her experience and what she's done for herself and possibly others about coping with a rare disease and dealing with survivorship. Sarah earned her master's degree from Argosy University and trained as a licensed associate marriage and family therapist, and she's currently working towards full licensure. Her story may be like many her age, where bone marrow failure disease struck at a critical juncture in life when young people are just getting started in a career, or even just before when they have a chance to start. So this presents its own set of problems for young patients to work through, as if dealing with a rare disease is not enough of a challenge. And we'll be touching on all this later. So, Sarah, first to get started, we'd like to know a little about you. Can you share your age at diagnosis, your age now, and then what your life was like before you received your diagnosis, before you started feeling differently and thought something might be wrong? Just, in other words, just what you were up to before all this happened.
Absolutely. So I am 32 years old, and I was initially diagnosed when I was 28, and I had just graduated with my master's degree. Basically, I was feeling confident and ready to kind of start the next chapter of my life, and I had worked really hard to earn my degree. And I was just so excited to start working and make my mark on the world. And essentially, I had felt like I had the world at my feet, and I could kind of choose the direction that I wanted my life to go. And so basically, I had come back from a trip and celebrated graduation. And then essentially after that was when I was diagnosed, and basically some of the signs were I had bruises.
What started going wrong, the first things you noticed?
Sure. So basically the summer before I was diagnosed, I had noticed there was a lot of bruising all over my body, really, and I didn't really know at the time what was wrong. I just had thought maybe it was like a low iron count or something like that. And so essentially, I had made an appointment with my primary care physician just to see what was happening. So essentially, that's where that all started.
Okay, then. And it seemed like it was a relatively short term before you actually got your diagnosis. Could you just tell us a little bit about who you saw and who you were referred to? You went to see your primary care physician, but then clearly must have been referred on to other specialists. Tell us a little about the sequence of appointments you had, who you saw and in what order.
So initially, from the primary care physician that I had saw, they had called me right away that evening after they had gotten my blood results, and they said, basically, your blood counts are all extremely low, and you need to see a specialist right away. So then they referred me to a local hematologist's office, and then from there, they did some more initial blood work. And essentially, PNH and aplastic anemia were suspected, but they had felt like they didn't have a lot of knowledge base because they were kind of operating out of in a suburb out of Minneapolis. So they had referred me even further to the University of Minnesota, which basically they deal with a lot of extensive rare cases. So then I was referred to a specialist at the University of Minnesota.
Okay, thank you for telling us about the series of referrals you went through. And just to be clear, in your case, the aplastic anemia and PNH were diagnosed at the same time. Is that correct?
Yes.
And
right.
I just want to interrupt real quick and fill in our viewers, if you aren't familiar with PNH, that stands for paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria, which is a lot to say and even worse to spell. So we just refer to it as PNH most of the time.
Thank you, Tricia, for commenting on that. During this time, what were the real challenges for you? Of course, you're going to all these doctor's appointments. Clearly, you're probably not feeling all that great. But
No.
during this time, after you were diagnosed, there may have been a little time before treatment and things started, before could have started to feel better at all. Can you just tell us about how you got through that?
Yeah. So essentially, kind of looking back from when I was diagnosed, when I was going through everything, it took a long time for my mind to essentially catch up with my body. A lot of things were happening around me, and a lot of people were speaking about me. But I kind of, at that point, just kind of lost. I lost myself, and I kind of went numb. Is kind of the best way to describe it. I didn't really acknowledge any of the emotions until a much later date, because I was just in such shock and disbelief that this was happening, because there was just a certain way that I was wanting my life to go, and this was so unbelievable to me.
Now, to just toggle back to your treatment, can you tell us a little bit about the treatment regimen? Just, you may know some of the drug names and remember the frequency and dosages and infusions and all that. Can you tell us about what happened and what it was like and how you felt? Because, of course, there are side effects from treatment. Mm-hmm. And also, can you tell us how long it all went on?
Sure. So from initial diagnosis, I was actually diagnosed in October of 2014. And then essentially I started my treatment right away in December, like early December of that year. I was already in the hospital. So, there was not much time between initial diagnosis for me anyways and actual treatment. And so essentially my specialist at the U, she recommended a treatment called ATG, which is
thymocyte globulin. ATG, antithymocyte globulin. Yes.
Yes. So she recommended that for me to specifically address the aplastic anemia part. Just hoping, that would help that in some way. And unfortunately for me, I know certain people, they essentially do not experience little or if any side effects. But for me, it was a really horrible experience. I had several of the indicated side effects, like I had rigors, which was horrible. I had extreme nausea, just, low blood pressure. And I was just extremely, extremely sick for a long time. And it took a lot out of me, just physically and emotionally as well.
So clearly you got the worst of the side effects, didn't you?
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And what was your longest hospital stay?
So throughout all of my, the years that I've had this, I've had 5 total hospital stays. But the longest I've been in the hospital, essentially for side effects or treatments has been 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, thanks for sharing that, because I know it all may kind of blur together. And of course, it's something that you may not want to remember much of. But let's talk a little bit now about the people on your medical care team. Of course, there's nurses and doctors and social workers and all kinds of people. How did you interact with them, and are you still seeing any of them, even if it's very infrequently?
Yes. So initially, like I had said, I had started out with a primary hematologist, and I had her for about 1.5 years. And then I actually ended up switching to a different doctor, essentially because for me specifically, the relationship wasn't working out. I felt like we just didn't have the best of communication between like a doctor and a patient, like how it should feel, especially with, being a new patient and having this, rare disease. I felt personally like I wanted to have a more personal relationship with the doctor that I found.
So you made a change.
Yeah, that was really important to me, and also someone who's at the same time extremely knowledgeable, because I know it's a very rare thing and needs to be not taken lightly. So
and you can't it's almost impossible to overstate how important your relationship with your doctor is. And you recognized this and decided it was time to make a change. And then you made a change for the better.
Mm-hmm.
Now, going back, you've talked a little bit about treatment and side effects. After ATG, what happened then?
Yeah. And then, so essentially after that, I had a second round of ATG because the first round was not successful for me. So I was in the hospital again the following June of the next year.
Okay.
And essentially from that, I had experienced again a lot of the similar side effects, and essentially it was unsuccessful for me again at that point.
Okay, then what happened next? Just to follow on the chronology of the treatment and the relative success or lack of success you've referred to, what happened next?
Then it was basically suggested that I go on a new treatment called Solaris or eculizumab, which is an infusion given typically over a 2 weeks time period.
Okay, and so there was a routine Solaris treatment then.
Yes, and then just to verify that for myself, I basically decided I was going to seek a second opinion. So I did end up going to Utah actually, to the Huntsman Cancer Institute to see a PNH specialist there, who basically agreed with my doctor at the U that eculizumab was the right course of action for me.
Well, it's hard to overstate, again, having a doctor that you're comfortable communicating with, it's hard to overstate the importance of getting a second opinion if you feel you need one, and that's exactly what you did. Tricia?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a quick question. So are you still doing the treatments?
Yes, I am.
Therapy? Do you go, how often do you have to go for that?
So as of right now, I do go once every 2 weeks, but it has fluctuated in the past because of the difference of my numbers. There was a period of time where I had gone for once every 10 days. And then the dosage of the Solaris had changed as well. So there was a period of time where it was at 900 milligrams, but as of now, I'm at 1,200 milligrams.
Well, clearly you are someone who's keeping track of things, keeping track of your treatment right down to the dates, the dosages, and all of these things that are so important in being an active participant in your own treatment.
Yes. And I really feel like it's a new role for me to kind of step into this medical world and kind of learn how to be my own advocate.
Good. Now, once you responded to treatment, at what point did you start just feeling better?
So basically, I started feeling better almost right away with the Solaris treatment. It did take a long time for my numbers to kind of steadily improve, because initially when I was diagnosed, my platelets were in the teens, and then actually I had a hemoglobin of probably around 7, which is all extremely below normal.
Okay, so you kept track of your blood counts too, right down to the numbers. Then as you start to go off of the treatment subject, back to how you felt and what you're doing, once you started responding to treatment and feeling better, how's your life been as far as interests and work and getting back to the way you wanted things to be going?
Yeah, so basically I had struggled for a really long time with getting employment, essentially because I was essentially ready to start working, and I was denied that opportunity because of being so sick with PNH and aplastic anemia. It took something from me. So I struggled a lot with some depression and just some mental health things, and it took a long time for me to really start to accept this PNH and aplastic anemia as a part of myself, because I was fighting for a long time against accepting it, just because of the fact that you to a point, you expect someone who's older to maybe get sick or get something, but I just was fighting so hard against that when I finally started to accept, like, this is a part of my story, that's when things kind of started to open up for me, when I was able to work through my emotions that went along with my diagnosis.
Well, that goes back to something I said at the outset, where this happened to you at a time in your life when you were just ready to get going, and then this has to happen. You go through the treatment, and then it does seem like after a bit of a wilderness period out there, looking for employment, you found something, and something that you do like. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you're doing now?
Yeah, so I just recently, about a month and a half ago, was offered a position at the Emily program, which is working with people that have eating disorders. So essentially, this gives me the opportunity to continue to work towards my full licensure, which is something that I've really wanted for a long time, and I've been ready to start doing that again. It's just the fact that my body wasn't allowing me at the time to go back to work.
So in a way, you feel like, to an extent, you're back on track professionally, picking up where things ended with something that is career related.
I do. Sometimes I can't believe that, someone actually said yes to me as far as, being in this professional realm again, because I am so used to being in this, quote unquote sick role for so long, that I feel like, who is this person stepping out into this professional role? I don't know yet, like, who this new Sarah is, but I'm excited to kind of, stumble around in there and really see what is, who is Sarah post, being sick.
Yeah, your post illness identity, and we know who the new Sarah is. Now, would like to bring this back to just AAMDSIF. Can you tell us a little bit about how you found us and just, you went to a conference and just a little bit about how AAMDS helped you and when all this got started.
Yeah, so for a long time, I didn't really know where to look, and honestly, I was too sick at the time to even think about reaching out for different resources. So when I was actually able to find essentially find AAMDS, DSIF, I couldn't believe that there was this great community out there, that there's a lot of, personally for me, because I live in Minnesota, that there's a lot of, there's an online community that's available that I've been able to be in touch with. And then through that, I've been able to connect with a couple of more local patients like myself. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without you guys. So
how about the conference? You met people in person, and was there anything else you'd like to say about the patient and family conference in Minneapolis you went to?
Yeah, I did meet people in person, and that was nice. And I did get to, hear a couple of speakers and then just go to a couple of kind of individual conferences. It inspired me to want to share my story and hopefully just connect with others, because that's really who I am at heart as a person. Is not only I want to share this story to help myself heal, but I want to help others as well in any way that I can. And it kind of inspired me to want to eventually someday speak and, maybe write a book of some kind, just kind of shedding some light on what it's like to be a patient, not only physically what you go through, but emotionally and mentally as well as like financially as well. That's a big part of being sick.
Oh, it clearly is, and you've clearly thought all through this. I think one more thing about AAMDSIF, you're on our patient education council, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you're still involved in an ongoing way.
Yes, and then I am a part of there's a PNH committee as well.
Okay, so you're still connected to us, even though you're beyond your treatment, or you're just on maintenance treatment now. Now we're getting to the, I guess I call it advice. You've clearly put considerable thought into how to maintain an emotional equilibrium and balance to balance the weight of this diagnosis and going through the treatment. And so you learned things, you found an inner reliance, and have indicated that you, as you did a moment ago, you'd hope to impart some of this to others who are experiencing the same thing. Could you talk just a little bit about this? And then to conclude, just think about what your advice would be to someone who is now where you were then when this first happened and you don't know what's going on.
Mm-hmm. I would say to someone that it's a delicate balance of, obviously you have to have that fight in you. You have to have that grit, because essentially when you get diagnosed, your body and your mind kind of go in this survival mode initially. So it's a balance of fighting, but also, kind of giving yourself that grace and time to heal at the same time, because honestly, fighting all the time, it's exhausting in the same breath. Like, yes, you need that fight, but also you need to learn, and you will learn like how to listen to yourself, listen to your body, and, it will tell you what your body needs. And honestly, I would tell someone, like, don't forget the core of who you are, because when you unmask what's underneath, you're battling this rare disease, but underneath that disease, you are still you. So it's important to not forget that. and you're just like a different version of yourself. And you'll learn how to use your voice. And because honestly, I lost my voice for a long time, and I was so completely lost, and I was able to eventually find my own voice and ask for, what I needed from other people, which was also really important for me to learn how to do and kind of advocate for myself.
Well, that's a really cogent explanation of everything, a summation of everything you experienced, and your advice for others. I don't think I've ever heard it explained so clearly before. So, Sarah, we want to thank you for sharing your entire journey from start to finish, where you are now, and what you've learned, and your ability to impart that to other patients who are experiencing what you have experienced. So now back over to you, Tricia.
Thank you, Bob, and thanks so much, Sarah.
Thank you guys both for having me on today.
And thank you, listeners, for being here. As a reminder, the AAMDSIF helpline is here for you at 800-747-2820, option 2, or email help@aamds.org, where you can be connected to Peer Support Network and other support groups. To connect with your peers online, you can join the confidential chat at marrowforums.org, which you can also find through our website at aamds.org. We'll see you next time. So long.